The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Chapter 13. The Rescue. The Cowardly Lion was very pleased to hear that a bucket of water had melted the Wicked Witch. Dorothy immediately unlocked the gate of his prison and set him free. Together, they went into the castle, where Dorothy's first action was to summon all the Winkies. She told them that they were no longer slaves. There was great joy among the yellow Winkies, because they had been forced to work hard for many years by the Wicked Witch, who had always treated them very cruelly. They chose to keep this day as a holiday from then on, and spent it enjoying big meals and dancing. If only our friends, the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman, were with us, I would be quite happy," said the Lion. "Do you think we could rescue them?" the girl asked anxiously. "We can try," the Lion replied. They summoned the yellow Winkies and asked if they would help rescue their friends. The Winkies said they would be glad to do everything in their power for Dorothy, because she had freed them from bondage. Dorothy selected several Winkies who seemed to know the most, and they all set out together. They traveled through the rest of that day, and part of the next, until they reached the rocky plain where the Tin Woodman lay, battered and bent. His axe lay beside him, but its blade was rusted and the handle had snapped off short.
"Ah, my poor friend. Are you okay?"
The Winkies lifted the Tin Woodman tenderly in their arms and carried him back to the Yellow Castle. Dorothy shed a few tears at the sad sight of her old friend, and the Lion looked grave and regretful. Upon reaching the castle, Dorothy asked the Winkies, "Are any of your people tinsmiths?" "Yes, some of us are very skilled tinsmiths," they replied. "Then bring them to me," she said.
"He'll fix these broken things."
When the tinsmiths arrived, carrying all their tools in baskets, she inquired, "Can you straighten the dents in the Tin Woodman, restore his shape, and solder him together where he is broken?" The tinsmiths examined the Tin Woodman carefully and replied that they believed they could mend him as good as ever. They set to work in one of the castle's big yellow rooms, laboring for 3 days and 4 nights, hammering, twisting, bending, soldering, polishing, and pounding his legs, body, and head. Finally, he was restored to his original form, with joints working as well as before. Several patches were visible, but the tinsmiths had done fine work, and the unvain woodman minded them not at all.
"Wow, I can walk again."
When at last he entered Dorothy's room to thank her for the rescue, he was so pleased that he shed tears of joy. Dorothy carefully wiped every tear from his face with her apron to prevent his joints from rusting. Dorothy's own tears fell thick and fast with joy at reuniting with her old friend, and these needed no wiping. As for the Lion, he wiped his eyes so often with the tip of his tail that it became quite wet, obliging him to go into the courtyard and dry it in the sun. "If only we had the Scarecrow with us again," said the Tin Woodman, once Dorothy had finished recounting all that had happened. "I should be quite happy." "We must try to find him," said the girl.
"Where are you now?"
So she called the Winkies to assist her, and they traveled all that day and part of the next. They reached the tall tree in whose branches the winged monkeys had tossed the Scarecrow's clothes. The tree was very tall, with a trunk so smooth that no one could climb it. But the Tin Woodman declared at once, I'll chop it down, and then we can retrieve the Scarecrow's clothes." While the tinsmiths had been mending the Tin Woodman, another Winky, a goldsmith, had crafted an axe handle of solid gold and fitted it to the woodman's axe in place of the broken one. Others polished the blade until all rust was removed, making it glisten like burnished silver. No sooner had he spoken than the Tin Woodman began to chop, and soon the tree crashed down, sending the Scarecrow's clothes tumbling from the branches to the ground. Dorothy gathered them up and had the Winkies carry them back to the castle, where they were stuffed with clean straw. Behold! The Scarecrow stood as good as ever, thanking them profusely for his rescue. Now reunited, Dorothy and her friends enjoyed a few happy days at the Yellow Castle, where they found all they needed for comfort. But one day, the girl thought of Aunt Em and said, "We must return to Oz and claim his promise." "Yes," said the Tin Woodman. "At last I shall receive my heart, and I shall get my brains," added the Scarecrow joyfully. "And I shall get my courage," said the Lion thoughtfully. "And I shall return to Kansas," cried Dorothy, clapping her hands. "Oh, let us set out for the Emerald City tomorrow."
Let's head back to the Emerald City.
This they resolved to do. The next day they summoned the Winkies, bade them farewell, and departed. The Winkies were sorry to see them leave. They had grown so fond of the Tin Woodman that they begged him to remain and rule the Yellow Land of the West. Seeing they were determined to leave, the Winkies presented Toto and the Lion with golden collars. To Dorothy, they gave a beautiful diamond-studded bracelet, to the Scarecrow, a gold-headed walking stick to prevent stumbling, and to the Tin Woodman, a silver oil can inlaid with gold and set with precious jewels. Each traveler made a gracious speech to the Winkies in return, and all shook hands until their arms ached. Dorothy went to the witch's cupboard to fill her basket with provisions for the journey, where she saw the golden cap. She tried it on her head and found it fitted her exactly. She knew nothing of the golden cap's charm, but seeing it was pretty, she resolved to wear it and carry her sunbonnet in the basket. Thus prepared for the journey, they set out for the Emerald City, with the Winkies cheering them 3 times and sending many good wishes.
Good luck.